Joe Iconis started writing this song when he was 6 or 7 years old. He finished it when he was 30 years old. I think you will hear both Joe Iconis's in this song. Let her rip. Mothers are special. Mothers are special. When you're sad. When you're sad. Mothers are
Hi,
special.
I'm Jennifer Ashley Tepper.
And I'm Joe Iconis, and you're listening to Album Podcast on the Broadway Podcast Network.
On this episode, we're going to be talking about Mothers R Speshel, Wen Yer Sad, which is famously a collaboration between Joe Iconis and his much younger self.
Yeah, it's one of the few collaborations writing-wise on the record, actually the only one on the record. And it's the first song I ever wrote in my whole damn life.
In this episode, you will hear about recording in the studio with the great Lin-Manuel Miranda, including a very special behind-the-scenes moment we had with him involving the Tick, Tick, Boom movie, and about how the song was created in this special version with our special guest.
Yeah, we can't wait for you to hear it.
To go to prom, they'll give you a condom and a shot of Banaka and say you're the bomb.
It's the only collaboration on the album, and the collaboration is between me at age, I think 30 when I wrote the song, and me at age 6 or maybe 7. I can't really remember. And that is because Mothers Are Special, When You're Sad is the first song that I ever wrote.
And what inspired you to pick it back up? Like, do you remember when you were 30? Did you go, oh, I want to do this on a Mother's Day concert? Or does your family joke about the song and that's why it was still in your brain?
No, so I had seen a video many years ago of myself performing the song. It was a song that I actually didn't remember, and then my oldest best friends, Kevin Manganaro and Mike Etanani, and I were hanging out in Kevin's basement, and this was probably like around college years, right? And so like in my 20s, and we were hanging out, and Kevin had a videotape of like old movies, and on this videotape was this recital, or not recital, like this culminating show from a summer theater camp that Kevin and I did when we were like 6 years old. And so it was just like a 2-week camp, but then we did this little show at the end. And then part of the show was, people sort of doing individual talents. And I sang the song that I said that I wrote. And I was too scared to sing the song myself. And so I had like a sock puppet who sang it, and I like hid underneath the desk and had the puppet above the desk. And so that was my introduction to Mothers Are Special, When You're Sad. And the song itself is just like that first little chorus. The mothers are special, when you're sad. It's that repeated 4 times. And so I remember watching that for the first time and just being like, oh my God, this is literally the first song I ever wrote here. And I think Kevin still has the tape, but I haven't seen it since. But I always remember the song. And then I wrote it when I was 30 for, there used to be this thing called 6-Word Memoir, which I feel like was like an NPR show or something. And so they did a live 6-word memoir show. And basically it was like, it was writers, performers, whoever's, you would like read your 6-word memoir and then do a bit about it or something. And so my 6-word memoir was Mothers Are Special, When You're Sad. And I did an expanded version of the song as my like presentation for a 6-word memoir. And that's how the song was born.
What was your own mother's reaction when you revived the song?
My mom, she liked it a lot. I feel like it wasn't, the reaction wasn't like, oh my God, my son is the best. It wasn't it wasn't an immediate, like crying and falling all over me. But she liked it. She thought it was good. There's definitely things in the song that are not specific to my mother. Like, I was really excited once I got into the song about this idea of taking, like the knowledge and experiences of a 30-year-old man and sort of treating them like a children's song. It's like, if you were able to talk about like, STDs on Sesame Street, what would that kind of song sound like? That's like the idea. But my
Joe
mom,
Iconis does Avenue Q.
it's that, yeah, yeah. I guess it's that. Yeah, I guess I just had the idea for Avenue Q 15 years after Avenue Q came out. But um, I think that the idea of my mother ever handling a condom, let alone handing me a condom, is so removed from my mom that that's an example of something that just literally never would happen. So I think she loves the song, but she doesn't necessarily think it's fully about her.
Yeah. And when did you decide that this was going to be on the album? And did it immediately pop out to you as like a good special guest spot for Lin-Manuel Miranda?
Yeah, it's a song that I do in concert from time to time, and I sing it, or the great Lance Rubin sings it sometimes. But for the album, I liked the idea of having Lynn guest on the album, because Lynn is someone who I've known since the beginning of my career, when I was writing my show The Black Suits, which was about a Long Island garage band, and had a lot of sort of like things about it that were pulled from my own life. That's when Lynn was writing In the Heights, and In the Heights was sort of pulling things from his own life, and so in the early days we tended to be like connected a lot. Like, people would sort of speak of us in the same breath, and then we sort of went down different paths or whatever. But he's just been such a fixture in my life, and I thought it would be so cool to have him on the album, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted him to do. But then, as soon as I kind of stumbled on the Mothers or Special idea, I was like, oh yeah, it has to be this. Just because he's such an immense talent, and like, he's so famous. He's just like, he's the most famous person currently traipsing through the theater world.
Mhm.
He's so huge. The idea of having this person who has that level of like worldwide notoriety and fame sing this like really simple kind of like silly song about mothers felt really appropriate to me. And he has just like such a sweetness about him, and it just felt like a good match. And luckily he was totally game, and um and he was amazing. I love his performance so much. He took it so seriously, and yeah, I really love it. I think he has like a sweet innocence to him that is really, I think, really, it lends itself well to the song. I really
Mhm.
I really dig it.
And what was it like recording? I remember, obviously all the album was recorded during deep COVID, but it was just so, I don't know, startling to be in a studio with Lin-Manuel Miranda when like we hadn't seen anyone outside of our bubbles in so long. And I know that he did some improv on the song, and
Mhm.
it was early in the process, I think, of recording.
It was, yeah. I remember the Lynn session being so surreal, because like, I know him, but we're not like best buds. We're not like hanging out all the time. And so there's like a bit of like a starriness kind of always around him. And then he like, got to the session, and um and we talked about the song, and he was like, is it okay if I mess around with it a little bit? And I was like, yeah, 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 of course. And so he did like the sort of like interjection things in the song. I'm of course like blanking on every single one of them now. But those were all him, and he just kind of like went for it, and we talked about it, but he was like completely in his element. And the intro at the top of the song was something that he thought would be a good idea to include. The sort of like explanation of what the song is, which was something that I was always so like, I don't know if this is like cringy to have like this one song be introduced. But just because it's like, the song also, it's like obviously it's me, but I do feel like it's like the person whose mother is special in the song is a writer. It does feel like a song that a writer wrote, and so it felt kind of appropriate that it's a song that I wrote, as originally just to straight up honor my mother, and then years later, when I collaborated with my younger self to make it a little bit about honoring all mothers and the messiness of that, then to have yet another writer kind of take it on and embody it. It just all felt appropriate. But in the studio that day, the other thing that I remember the most of all was that Lin was like in the middle of making Tick Tick Boom, and he showed myself and you, Jennifer Ashley Tepper, an early cut of the Sunday sequence
Yeah.
from Tick Tick Boom, like in the studio, which is just it's so insane to think about the timelines of all of that, and to be like, we were in COVID and we were like in a studio with Lin-Manuel, him in the middle of making Tick Tick Boom, showing us like footage.
Yeah, I think for, like, COVID reasons and privacy reasons and all of that, I think it was just, like, you, me, and Ian Keggy, who's obviously producing
Yeah.
and recording, and Lynn, and so he felt, like, open to showing us that, and, like, for me, like, having been in the studio for the album and then, like, working on Tick, Tick, Boom, those were
Mhm.
the only 2 things in the world, so it was very, like, cool during that COVID time period to get to see Sunday, which, like, in the world of security, never could have been sent to us on the internet. It was just because we were in person in the studio recording Muthers R Speshel.
Yeah.
It was really cool. I feel like his recording of this song has made me feel more than ever that another really good person to sing this song would be Kermit the Frog. Like, I just
Mhm.
feel like if it's ever like the Muppets sing Joe Iconis, this is a very clear Kermit selection. Um,
Yeah,
Not
definitely.
just because of the sock puppet, although maybe the original inspiration is part of it.
Yeah, no, I think that it's like the innocence, but the knowingness of the song feels very Kermit and very
Yeah.
Lin-Manuel. Yeah.
Yeah, anything else about Mothers Are Special? When You're Sad, you have to include that.
I do, yeah. It's like I like that my first song that I ever wrote has a title with a parenthetical in it. That
Yeah, I
feels
also
correct.
the first song you ever wrote, so I can't believe I haven't done this myself yet. Maybe I did years ago, sort of, but I would love if a fan who's listening to this podcast right now could go through all of the songs on album and number them based on when you wrote them so that we have a chronological timeline that starts with Mothers Are Special and shows the entire trajectory chronologically. I think that'd be really cool. So hit us up on Instagram if you're that person who's going to dive into all the podcasts and interviews and figure out exactly when each song was written.
Oh, yeah. I love that. Well, I mean, what is funny about that is that if we did that, I know the first 2, it would be Mothers Are Special, When You're Sad, and then the next one would be Starting to Forget, which I
Yeah.
wrote in undergrad. And it is funny that it's like those songs, and Starting to Forget is a song that's about my grandfather dying. And it's like the songs are about my family. And it's the ultimate, like, sort of writing what you know, that it's like my first, however many years of being a writer, it was all just kind of about my immediate family, and then it got a little bigger where I'm sort of writing about, my friends and this desire to make art, and then I'm kind of writing about like what happens when you have a family of artists. How do you take it to the next level? And yeah, I do feel like, oh, I can kind of chart my life in the subject matters of the songs that I wrote.
Yeah, I totally think that'll be true, but the chronological would be interesting to see if there's some outlier to
Yeah.
that or the first couple songs that are on the album that you wrote that are, like, about something outside your experience more so than
Mm-hmm.
in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, hit us up. Mothers are special, and so are fans. Hit us up
Yeah.
with your chronological timeline.
Hey, thanks so much for listening or watching to my podcast. Do me a favor and go to wherever you just listen to or watch this thing and subscribe or like or give us a great rating or review, and then head to bpn.fm/album to find out even more information about this podcast, more ways to watch, more ways to listen, and check out my album. Thanks so much for hanging out.
Album Podcast is executive produced by Liz Armstrong, produced by Dori Berenstein, Alan Seals, Kim Garris, and the rest of the team at the Broadway Podcast Network. Be sure to visit bpn.fm/album for both audio and video versions of this podcast and to listen to Album.
Special all the time. Thank you, Joe.